Scientists devote their life to their research, and thanks to their contributions, our world is a better place. For chemists, biologists, physicists, and every other specialty in between, society owes its greatest achievements to some of science's greatest minds. Number 5. What's more dangerous than being an ordinary person during Soviet times? Being a Soviet scientist. Soviet physicist Vladimir Alexandrov mysteriously vanished during a trip to Madrid in 1985, a topic that still has people talking to this day. Alexandrov was the physicist behind the idea of nuclear winter. More specifically, he created the mathematical model behind the principle. Nuclear winter is the hypothesis that following an all-out nuclear war, soot from fires would be injected into the atmosphere and block out the sun from reaching the Earth. This in turn would create a knock-on cooling effect and would change how we live in ways we couldn't even dream of. Alexandrov was extremely important to Soviet Party officials. After all, the Cold War was still happening, albeit tensions were finally simmering down in the last few years of the Union. So when in 1985 he vanished after a trip to Madrid, theories began running wild about what could have possibly happened to him. Some theories point out the fact that Alexandrov was silenced by the KGB after it thought he was going to expose the truth about nuclear winter. Other physicists have commented that the nuclear winter hypothesis is just simply that, a hypothesis, but it was majorly played up in order for the US and allied countries to discontinue their nuclear weapons, thus making them weaker when the time came to attack. Other people believe that Alexandrov defected and fled to Spain or neighboring European countries. Many of his fellow physicists from the Soviet Union and the US believe that Alexandrov went into hiding after falling out of favor with the Soviet elite. After all, he was about to expose them, and they would have wanted to take care of that. A missing persons report was never filed in Madrid, and soon after, the trail went cold. It appears we'll only know the truth when Alexandrov decides to come forward. Number 4. In January of 1995, Nepal's greatest anthropologist, Dor Bahadur Bista, mysteriously vanished after he was seen boarding a bus headed toward Chisapani or Dangadi. Bista wasn't just a successful anthropologist, he was also the driving force behind the removal of the caste system in Nepal, and aimed to empower the working classes in Nepal. After graduating from a university in London with a certificate in Indian ethnography, Bista traveled back to his native Nepal and began studying local areas within the country. It was during this time that Bista claimed he'd fallen in love with anthropology and made it his mission to travel around Nepal and document everything he could about the culture, lifestyles, traditions, and people. During his time as an anthropologist, Bista wrote and published Fatalism and Development, Nepal's Struggle for Modernization, which was incredibly unpopular with the government and the ruling classes. His book explored Nepalese culture and sought to dismantle the class and caste system that Nepalese people had faced for centuries. The government accused him of trying to empower the working classes, and Bista was soon a target. In the weeks leading up to his disappearance, he had confided in friends that he was worried about the response he'd gotten about his book. It also revealed that Bista had been challenging the patriarchal system in Nepal, empowering women in communities to get an education, as well as learning to cook and clean, something that didn't sit well with the more conservative people in Nepal. He told friends that he was planning a trip into the wilderness of Nepal to conduct some further research, but neglected to inform them exactly where he was going or how long he'd be gone for. It seems he entrusted one friend in particular, whom he told he was fleeing Nepal for his own safety because he felt that his life was in danger. In January of 1995, Bista boarded a bus headed toward 2 regions in Nepal. He headed out on this research mission alone and has not been seen since. Many Nepalese people believe the government took care of him as he was a clear threat to their system, but until Bista himself or new evidence comes to light, we may never know. Number 3. In 1848, Prussian scientist Ludwig Leichhardt set out on an extraordinary trek across Australia's desert from east to west. The expedition was over 4,500 kilometers on horseback across treacherous lands, many of which had not been explored by Westerners at the time. Leichhardt had landed in Australia in 1842 after completing his studies in natural science at various prestigious institutions in England, France, Italy, and Switzerland. Leichhardt arrived in Sydney with big hopes and dreams, and for 6 months he studied in the Sydney area, taking in every detail that he could, engaging with as many scientists and academics and normal people as possible to get an idea of the country he was about to travel. Over the next few years, Leichhardt traveled around Australia studying the natural landscape and writing various articles about geology, botany, and natural science. Confident in his abilities to navigate the unforgiving terrain, Leichhardt set off in his largest expedition yet and gathered a group of 7 men, 50 bullocks, 20 mules, 7 horses, along with equipment and supplies to see them through the trip. Leichhardt was beyond excited and couldn't wait to return to Sydney to publish his findings and reap the rewards. Only he never returned. The last confirmed sighting of Leichhardt and his crew was on April 3rd at McPherson Station in Coogan. After that, the whereabouts of Leichhardt and his crew remain unknown. A search party was sent to find the missing scientist, but all that was found was a small brass plaque with his name on it that had been attached to his rifle. A few years later, people came across the letter L etched into trees, which Leichhardt apparently used to mark his journey, but this offered no further clues. With the disappearance of the Prussian scientist a complete mystery, the Australian newspapers were left to run rampant with wild theories and stories about what had happened to him. Newspapers ran with the story that he'd been kidnapped by Aborigine people and forced to live among them. Other stories ranged from him dying of thirst to voluntarily running away and living out the rest of his life in the unforgiving bushland of Australia. No further evidence has ever come to light as to what happened to Leichhardt, and likely we may never find out the truth. Number 2. The National Bureau of Standards physicist Carl R. Dish mysteriously vanished from his post in Bird Station in Antarctica on May 8, 1965, leaving behind little clues as to his fate. His mysterious disappearance still leaves investigators with lots of questions and very little answers. So what exactly happened to Carl? Carl was stationed at Bird Station in Antarctica, which is around a mile from the main station hub. He was part of a team that had been assembled to analyze radio noises in the Antarctic and to report the findings back to the US government. On May 8, 1965, at around 9:15 a.m., Dish left Bird Station and intended to make the 1-mile walk back to the main hub, a journey he had taken numerous times before and was highly experienced in doing so. So when he didn't arrive at the main station by 10 a.m., his colleagues began to worry. They all knew just how unpredictable the climate could be, with temperatures at the time being -42 Celsius. Dish had left in full gear and was experienced at navigating through the area, but as hours ticked by, the search crews became more and more worried. By 1900 hours, the temperatures had fallen to -61, and snow blizzards made it impossible for the crews to follow any footprints or tracks he may have left. The search was called off days later, and no explanation as to what happened to him has ever been stated. That was until 1971, when a mysterious letter arrived at the McMurdo Message Center. It reads, "To the world, I am dead. They believe that my body is but a pinpoint frozen here to the surface of this white continent. I say to you, I, Carl Dish, live. Do not for one moment think that this was a mistake. Everything was planned. They pushed me, tormented me, and bored me with their shallow lives. The endless singing of the wind almost drives me mad. I begin to long for human companionship." Many believe this letter is a hoax, meaning that we're still no closer to solving the mysterious disappearance of Carl Dish than we were in 1965. In absence of facts, many rumors and theories have circulated over the years, with the main one being that despite his expertise, Dish got lost and passed away. A more interesting theory is that Dish was abducted by the Soviet Union. As Dish was incredibly established in his field and working for the US government, he would have been a great help to the Soviets. Although, of course, this is just a theory. Number 1. On August 1st, 2011, 5 Goroka scientists mysteriously vanished after setting off in their boat from Milimata. Gibson Gideon, Leonard Vavana, George Dagoya, Tania Okiva, and Lydia Petrus were all reported missing when they failed to turn up in West New Britain later that day. The 5 scientists were heading out to West New Britain to research malaria-related diseases sanctioned by the Institute of Medical Research where they all worked. After the 5 scientists, along with their crew, never arrived, a search party was assembled, but there was no trace of the missing scientists. It wouldn't be until months later that their abandoned boat would be found floating off the east coast with no clues as to what happened to them. It was later revealed that Tania Okiva sent a text message on August 2nd, 2011 to her sister asking for phone credits. The message also contained a demand for a further $1,000 worth of phone credits and a ransom of $10,000 for her release. Sadly, West New Britain authorities didn't take this message seriously and declined any further rescue efforts by sea and air. The search was eventually called off after authorities commented that they had no new leads as to the mysterious disappearances of the 5 scientists and chalked it up to them being captured by pirates. The head of the Institute of Medical Research, where the 5 scientists worked, said, quote, "The most difficult thing for the families and friends of these missing staff is that we don't know what happened to them. We've heard so many rumors, but unfortunately, none of these rumors have led us to something. So we're appealing to everyone who knows anything to just come forward and at least help us find some peace of mind." The case of the 5 missing scientists has been rife with conspiracy theories and wild claims. The authorities have taken the stance that the scientists were kidnapped by pirates, but declined to comment any further on the disappearance. Some people believe that the mystery runs much deeper, and the authorities' insistence on halting the search leads them to believe that a cover-up may be in operation. The question is, why would the authorities of West New Britain want to get rid of scientists who are working to investigate malaria-related diseases? If that is what they were really researching, of course. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.